Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the latest ARRL webinar program on programming radios with the CHIRP software. I'll be the moderator tonight. My name is Mike Corey, KI1U. I'm the ARRL Emergency Preparedness Manager. And joining us tonight is James Lee, November 1 Delta Delta Kilo, and he will be presenting the program for tonight. Just a few housekeeping items. First of all, we are recording the webinar, so it will be posted a few days following on the League's YouTube channel. You'll see announcements about it being posted through the usual media. If you have any questions, use the Ask a Question feature. I see a few people have already done that, and we'll try to handle them as we go. We're going to take a little break about halfway so James can address some questions. He will answer questions about which radios are supported or how to find out which radios are supported, and if a radio is not supported, how you can get more information. In fact, we were just discussing that before we started the webinar on a radio that I've got myself. If you've got questions, the webinar at arrl.org email, that's where all these questions get forwarded to afterwards. If we don't get to your question, don't worry about it. We'll gather them up. We'll get them to James, or we'll try to answer them ourselves to the best of our ability. So again, thank you everybody for joining us, and without further ado, I'll turn it over to James. James, you're on.
All right, thank you very much, Mike, and welcome everyone. And hopefully, I've never done this in the format of a webinar, so hopefully everything goes pretty well. I have this a few times, so here we go. CHIRP, for those of you who don't know what it is, well, it's not just something that's going wrong with your sideband transmitter or your CW transmitter. No, it's a nice piece of software that can program your UHF, VHF, mobile, and handheld radios, all the more modern ones that support programming through computer interface. Not necessarily all of them, as Mike mentioned. We'll talk about what is and isn't supported, because otherwise we get bogged down for about 3 hours trying to answer all those individually. So this presentation is an overview of the open source CHIRP software, which, like I said, can program most radios. I think we've already answered what is CHIRP. We'll go on to some of the other things, some of the common problems. When I've done this at conventions and clubs, we have a little bit of workshop time. Instead, I have a little bit of room at the end, depending on how we do for time, to do a little bit of a live demo. So that's what we're going to go through. So, about me, I've been, it's hard to believe, I've well past the quarter-century club, and like many of you who may be wondering, is my radio supported, I bought one of these inexpensive quad-band TYT 9800 radios, and because of that, I ended up becoming a CHIRP developer. I don't know if we have any other CHIRP developers online or not, but I want to give a big thank you to all of the other CHIRP developers. And I understand how the process works. I'm a very small bit player compared to a lot of the people who are more involved in CHIRP development. And I'll tell you, the CHIRP developer community are very, very supportive, and it was really my first experience with an open source project, and I really, really found it. So, what is CHIRP? So it's open source software, which is great, and it also runs on PCs, Macs, Linux. I ran it on a Raspberry Pi. I started out, I'm one of these people who converted from running PCs to running Macs. I'm talking to you from my Mac now. And it's really nice that it works on all of those platforms. Very nice. It supports most radios. And the real key to it is the community support. So that means if your radio isn't supported today, well, maybe it'll be supported tomorrow. And we'll go over this theme a few times. So, like I said, some of the benefits are this large number of supported radios, community support, not limited to just PCs. It seems to me, at least in reading a lot of the emails I see on various threads, that the Woxons and the Baofangs tend to be kind of the preferred way to program them is with CHIRP. Probably my favorite thing is the data portability from one radio to another. I have many different brands and models of radios, and you know, I have pretty much, you know, my favorite repeater is on channel 1, and other repeaters are on various channels, and it makes it much easier if they're all the same. It makes it very easy. You can also get databases of different repeaters. I'll go over that a little bit, or you know, create CSVs files from Excel or something like that, or some of these other things that generate repeater databases, and bring those in. So the first question that most people have is my radio supported? So back in August of 2015 was the first time I did this presentation. I know this is sort of a eye chart, and the list looked sort of like this in a little over a year ago, and I thought that was a pretty impressive list. And so I did an update to this presentation back in May, and now the list looks like this, and it's a lot bigger. And what's funny is when I went to do this presentation for the ham convention, I was reading about a particular radio that was just starting to be supported, which is not even listed here, which I have connected up to my computer, and we'll look at that, and that's the BTech UV5X3, which is a tri-band handheld. It doesn't show listed here, but if we went out to the web page, we'd probably find that that's showing up as supported now, even though it's sort of a preliminary driver. So how do you get CHIRP, or how do I find what is currently supported? Well, you would go to chirp.danplanet.com, and that's where you would get CHIRP. That's where you would find out which computers are supported, which radios are supported and things like that. There used to be, and there are still some notes about things called stable builds versus daily builds. It's always best, and all the developers are now recommending using the daily build and update frequently, in case whatever radio you want to use isn't currently supported. So that's kind of where you get CHIRP and where you see what's going on. I tell you what, I'm going to go back for a second and let you guys kind of look at this list. So, you know, you have Alincos, and you have the Baofangs and the BTechs, ICOMs, Jetstream, and personally I've used it on ICOMs, Jetstreams, the BTech, one of my Kenwoods, and of course the TYT, and the TYT 9800. Actually, this list is, this doesn't even show the 7800 on it. So this list from May of 2016 is already pretty obsolete. If I were to pull that down again, there'd be a much longer list. So again, I would recommend going to Dan Planet and looking there. And I'll talk a little bit more about what to do if your radio isn't supported, and there's a couple different ways of going about that. So let's assume your radio is supported. What do? Well, you install CHIRP, or you update it, and you plug in your programming cable and you fiddle with drivers, and that's the part that sort of frustrates me the most. And I'll go into this a bit later. I'm sorry, folks, but this is going to be one of my pet peeves. But there are problems with some of the chips in some of the cables not being supported with the latest drivers, and you know, whether it's counterfeit chips or incompatibilities or whatever. Probably 99% of the emails on the CHIRP support email lists are like dealing with drivers. And towards the end of this, I have some suggestions about how to work around all of the cable problems, because I no longer have any cable problems, and I solve it by making my own cables. Always download from your radio first. Even if you have two radios that are similar models, you never want to just take the image from one radio to another. Weird things can happen. So it's always best to download from the radio you're going to program, update whatever you want to update, and then upload back to the radio. And again, I will do some examples. Towards the end, we should have some time. So here's an example of what it looks like when we're downloading. Actually, I took this picture this morning in the trunk of my car. So here's a picture of my laptop, and to the left is my radio. To the right is some of the cabling, and you can see the sort of download in progress box in the sort of the upper left of the screen. Not very exciting, but what's really exciting to me is that I don't have to drag the radio into the car. I mean, into the house. I can just update stuff down in the car whenever I want. And so the download's complete, and you can see it again. It's kind of an eye chart, but we'll look at more details of this in a little bit. You can sort of see the table. You obviously can't read all the frequencies and things like that, but it will it'll look a little bit better. We'll do some demos, as well as I have some direct screenshots, so don't worry that you can't read that too much. So let's talk about common databases for the radio. So when you get CHIRP, it comes with a number of different frequencies, basic things that you might or might not want. Databases that are there. So if you want to just say, hey, I want to take all those channels and throw those into my radio, then they're right there. You can go to amateur-radio.net/CHIRP, and there's a generator there that lets you search for repeaters in different ways, and it actually has a CHIRP format generator that works most of the time. I have various lists that I have developed myself. And sorry that this is talking about the Boxborough area, but that was from the Boxborough Hamvention where I recently did this. The CHIRP generator in amateur-radio.net looks like this, and so you can list all transmitters within 75 miles of that, and you can select which frequency bands you're looking for. And in this case, I added a filter for minute because I was looking for the Minuteman Repeater Association affiliated repeaters, and that was a way for me to find all of those frequencies and create a database. So it saves a lot of that entering stuff and searching stuff. Everything's on the web these days. You just have to know where to look. So again, that's amateur-radio.net/CHIRP, so you guys can take notes of that or come back and watch this again when it's on YouTube. And just for the fun of it, I ran CHIRP on the Raspberry Pi. This is, you can actually see here I have CHIRP loaded up with a database from my ICOM ID880, as well as my Kenwood TH7D. So I could, move frequencies back and forth between them. I don't know if I moved my, can I move my pointer over there? Doesn't look like it. All right, so basically on the, there's got to be one of these tools here. Let me point here. Let's try this pointer. All right, I can't figure out how to work that. Anyway, the on the left-hand side, there's a bunch of tabs going down. So right now, we're looking at the banks. There's the memories. You can do the banks, the bank names, the detailed settings. We'll look at some of this stuff live. But one of the things that most people miss in CHIRP, and is very, very important, is if you see along the top, it says show empty, which is currently pushed on, so we can see, like channels 16 and 17. I don't have anything in them. But next to that, there's the word properties. And this is probably one of the most important sort of hidden features, is that word properties is actually a button. And you want to push that because that gets you into the more important stuff other than just frequency, but some of the other details about the radio. So let's take a look and see what those memory properties would look like. Let's say we selected channel 2 and we pushed on properties. We might see something like this. So the memory properties, you'll see I have 2 copies of this screenshot. One says general, the other one says other. So it's different on each radio. This happens to be from the TYT radio, because I noticed the emphasis and the commanding and all those buttons which are unique to the TYT radio. But here are all these other important settings, the PL tone, the power level. Well, some of those things we could get to from the main screen. But there are all these other properties which we may need to get into to set things. And I'll tell you, with my particular radio, finding the correct combination of emphasis and commanding and things like that to get the radio so it sounds good was pretty tricky. And then of course it has the display name or frequency. Some of the radios support where you can see the exact screen that shows up on may be different from radio to radio, but some people want to do that. And probably on the TYT 9800, one of the things that people get really twisted up on is, I push the talk and nothing happens when the repeater's tail is still up. Well, that's because you have the busy lockout turned on and it won't let you key up because it's hearing a signal. So you just have to know the details behind your radio, but at least all of the settings are there, or presumably are there, once you click on that property. So let's move on and see some of the other things. So after the memories, then there's potentially on this radio, we're looking at the TYT radio now, it has all of these settings down there, and there's all of these, the timeout timer and the auto turn off and the auto power off and all those kinds of settings that are particular from one radio to another. So unfortunately, you kind of have to edit those things however you like from one radio to another, but the frequencies themselves are easy to copy from one radio to another. Okay, so let's say we've got everything. We downloaded the radio, we saw a picture of that, we edited things to our heart's content, and oh, by the way, you can see this was on the Raspberry Pi that this particular screenshot is from. And so we'll go ahead and send that to the radio. So you just, go onto the menu, radio, send to radio, and like I said, I'll take some time in a little bit and demo through these things. And you send it to the radio, and off it goes. Probably, one of the really cool frequencies I found, or settings I found, was doing a group edit. And this is a really powerful part of the CHIRP software, other than just editing things one at a time. What happens if, I want to change everything. I want to change the power level or something on all of my memories to a different power level, or I want to change the tone or something like that. How can we do that? We can do that with a group edit. So what we can do is select a whole bunch of frequencies by dragging across them and highlighting those memories like I've shown in the left-hand screenshot, and then I can click on that properties button. And so let's say in this case in the panel to the right, I'm showing I've clicked on display and I want to change them all to display by name instead of display by frequency. So I can do that and then click OK. So I'm going to switch gears for a little bit here, and then we'll, and that is, I'm going to encourage all of you to join the community. So there's a CHIRP users mailing list, and there's a lot of things. I'm on both the CHIRP users mailing list and the CHIRP developers mailing list, and I encourage you to kind of read through a lot of that stuff. A lot of good stuff comes in there. People having similar problems. Unfortunately, like I said, sometimes it seems like 90% of it is problems with cables, which I'll get into a bit later. So there's sort of helps, tricks, tips, and tricks. You'll learn quite a bit. And you know what? If your radio is not supported, you can find out, you know, kind of what's going on with it. But I would say contribute. That's what I did. I wanted the TYT 9800 to be supported. So I said, well, you know, I know a little bit about programming. I have a radio. I'm willing to give it a try. And if the community was willing to help me, I was willing to go as far as I could. And through the support of a lot of really fantastic support from the rest of the community, I learned a ton. There's still some stuff I'd like to do, like getting the hypermemories to work, but all of the basic functions work really well. And then other people, like there was a guy who then took that work and also added the TYT 7800, and you know, both drivers got better from there. So it's all programmed in Python. I was reading the other day that Python is now the second most popular programming language, and the source code is controlled through Mercurial, and even through an odd variant of Mercurial, and that took a little bit of learning as well. And again, the community was very, very patient in teaching me how to do things, so I didn't mess up, and I wasn't too upset when I did something stupid and they told me, oh, do it this way instead. But anyway, so let's go on to some of the most common problems. And so the most common problems are with drivers. And I just, after reading all of the emails, people with Windows 8 or Windows 10 had no end to drivers with automatic updating of drivers and things like that. And I have to tell you that around Windows 7 is where I jumped off the Microsoft bandwagon and went over to Mac. So don't ask me any detailed questions about Windows. My comment is simply only by reading the emails and what people are having problems with. Hidden menus, like I already showed you a couple of tricks in navigating CHIRP, such as the property button to edit extra channel attributes and the settings tabs to go into the settings. There are also sometimes two very, very similar radios, but they're incompatible with each other, and usually the developers try to solve that problem if it comes up. So, but unless somebody says, hey, this doesn't work, we don't know, you know, or the developers in general don't know what's going on. So we can, Mike, we can either pause here. I'm going to go on to talk about cables and then a demo, but maybe we can pause here and maybe go through some of the questions.
Yeah, sure. We got a few, and I've just got a couple comments based on some of the questions. The one that came through was whether RT Systems cables are supported. And I can tell you from my own experience, I've used RT Systems cables and the manufacturer's cables, and of course, as James mentioned, you can also homebrew your own. I've used them on I tend to, me personally, I just tend to buy Yaesu VHF, UHF gear, but I've used them on those. And as somebody was asking about, you know, when a certain radio will be supported, and before the webinar started, we were talking about the FTM 100 C4FM rig that's currently available from Yaesu, which is one I have. And as James mentioned, if you want it programmed, no better time to learn how to program than the present, and there's a community that will help you do that. But I hesitated on volunteering to be the one that writes that bit of software. So James, we did have a few questions. Can you tell us whether or not DMR radios are supported?
As far as I know, I don't think there are any DMR radios on the list, and I just don't know what the story is behind that. I know that, up until now, most of the DMR radios were like Motorola radios, and you needed the proprietary Motorola software. I don't think you'll ever see CHIRP supporting the Motorola's. There are a number of issues there. But now there are a number of, more mainstream DMR radios. I would guess that if somebody wanted to, those might be addable to CHIRP. They managed to, get all the extra D-Star stuff into CHIRP, so maybe at some point somebody who, again, I would just treat the, the non-Motorola DMRs as a more likely candidate to be supported, but again, it's, just like your Yaesu C4 FM radio, it takes a developer having a radio or getting a radio donated to one of the more active developers that's willing to take on the challenge, or as in my case, a owner of a particular radio who's willing to jump in and with both feet and see what kind of success they can have. So I guess that's kind of a not yet for an answer.
Okay, great. And let's see. As far as printing out what you put into the memory, so if you've got you got a list, how do you go about printing out what you've put into your radio?
That's a good question. I don't know that I've ever tried that. You can certainly export it as CSV and then bring it into Excel and print it. I don't know if we can print directly from the interface. Maybe we'll try that during the demo and see what happens. Of course, it'll come out in my office, not on the other end of any of the webinars.
Okay. And if it's a CSV, you could probably put it into a spreadsheet and print from the spreadsheet, right?
Yeah, that's what I was saying, yes.
Yeah, okay. Somebody asked about any instances where the software caused any harm to the radio.
There are all kinds of warnings and cautions, and I leave them on in my version of the software, and I even added one of them to, the TYT driver. I guess the thing is, since it's, community software, the developers don't want to, guarantee that we're not going to screw something up. It's just like any other shrink-wrap software license. Well, you opened it, it's at your own risk. I don't really know about any instances of that, particularly occasionally on various message boards. You'll see people complaining, oh, I did this and it screwed up all of that. Again, if you download from the radio first, make your changes, and then re-upload, that's the safest way to do it.
Okay, great. Got just a couple more, and then and as I said at the beginning for everybody, if we don't get to your question, James, are you going to give contact information at the end in case we don't get to a particular question?
Sure. Well, everybody probably got my call, N1DDK, November 1, Delta, Delta Kilo. So N1DDK at ARRL.net will work as a forwarding path to me. Again, I'm not in the support business. I have a life of my own, a job of my own. So please don't overwhelm me. But I'm always willing to help a fellow man. I think that's a fellow ham. I think that's a really important part of the ham radio community.
Okay, sure enough. And for everybody, the first thing I would recommend is go to the website. There is a ton of information available on the website, including what radios are supported. If you've really done your research and it's still not you're still not finding an answer, check with James. You can also email us here at headquarters. And of course, there's I assume, James, there's lots of contact information on the website as well, right?
Yeah, the two email lists, and you saw I was about 4,000 messages behind on the CHIRP mailing lists. But there's a lot of good stuff that I encourage people. So I'm going to go back a bit. I don't know that I can go back smoothly, so I apologize to everyone. Let's see. Yeah, I guess just go back to chirp.danplanet.com as the, start by looking there, start by reading, There's a lot of great information there. There's facts. There's, supported radio lists. There's a way of requesting a radio be supported, but remember, this is a volunteer effort. So as a volunteer effort, request all you want, but unless you're buying people pizzas or donating radios for them to use for the guinea pig to get it working, it can be, it can be very open and a radio gets supported. And sometimes we find, or the developers find, that you have two similar radios, and they even have similar like software IDs, but they don't program the same, and that's when things get interesting. So it happens.
Okay, and I'm going to take this last one, and then we'll get on, and I'll also post the link to the website, and I'll send that out as a message to everybody. We had a question about which platform is best to run on PC, Mac, Pi, and James, I'm going to take a stab at this. If I were to answer the question, I'm going to say PC because I use PC. From what I can tell, CHIRP works well on all three, so it really depends upon what you're most comfortable with as a user, right?
Yeah, I think so, and I use it kind of in a weird way because I'm more of a programmer sort. So the fact that it's all Python, it's completely portable. And so the Python serial library gets you to the serial port, and the Python graphics library gets you to the the GUI side of it, and it pretty much works on anything. So whatever you have, whatever you're comfortable with, I don't think it makes much difference. I started out doing some of the development and stuff on the PC because there's some tools you can use on the PC to help kind of reverse engineer the factory OEM software. And then once I got past that, it's like, all right, I'm just moving on to doing everything from my Mac because I'm comfortable there.
All right. Okay, James, I'll turn it back over to you. We'll get to a few more questions here in a little bit. There are still a few in the queue. As I said, if we don't get to the question, just shoot us an email. You can send it to the webinar at arrl.org. And the webinar platform will also provide you a link to do follow-up questions, and we'll see the questions that you ask tomorrow when we do the report on this. But again, I encourage you to go to the website. I'll send that link out here in just a moment to everybody, and definitely do your research there. Join the users group as James suggested, and if push comes to shove, ask one of us, and we'll do our best to help you out. So okay, James, back to you.
All right. So, all right, now I'm not muted. Okay. I got kind of frustrated with even with my PC and my Mac about various USB chips, right? None of the computers have real serial ports anymore. Everybody's USB. And believe it or not, almost every radio that's out there uses what you would call logic level serial port signals. And these are not the same voltages that are on a standard RS-232 port. They're different voltages and they're inverted. But it's a common kind of thing. I'm not going to go into all of the technical details, but there are these really nice things that I found because I also did some Arduino things. So there's a board called an FTDI Breakout board, or sometimes called an FT232 FTDI USB to TTL serial adapter module for Arduino Mini, and you can find these many places, whether it's Amazon or SparkFun or some of the Chinese sites or eBay, and I've bought a couple of them. I haven't had any problems with any of them, although I was told in one of my other presentations that even still you might hit a counterfeit FTDI chip. These have an FTDI chip on them instead of a prolific chip on them. And what's kind of nice, if you look at the picture at the top of the screen, it's got a mini USB shown on the left-hand side, and then it's got a set of 6 pins coming off on the right-hand side, the way that picture is oriented. And once you do that, you have, those signals. So now it's just a matter of wiring from there to your actual connector. And once you have one of these boards that works, you can just change the radio end of it because that's really all that changes is the cable. So we'll go look at a couple more pictures and a couple more things that I've done as well. So I believe in making a homemade cable library. So what you see here is there was on the Miclor website. It's another great website. They have the pinouts for many, many different things. So I found for my BTech radio the picture kind of upper center, which said, okay, for the two-prong pluggy thingy, you know, where is the serial transmit, receive, and that kind of stuff. And so in the lower left is another picture of that FTDI board that I was talking about. The little table in the middle there is the list of the connections, the list of the pins in that same order. So we only really need 3 wires. We need the ground, the TX data, and the RX data. The picture on the far right has a quick hand-drawn schematic of you use a resistor and a diode to become compatible with an ICOM CIV port. So the ICOM CIV port you actually plug into the speaker port on some of those ICOM radios, and so that shows a picture. Again, it shows my FTDI port, my FTDI board with the cable that I made to go to an ICOM radio. So I have that little header connector. It goes off to a piece of cable, and then the tape bulge where it goes from the white cable to the black cable is where the diode and the resistor are hidden, and that's really all it is. And you use the ground, the sleeve for ground. You use the ring for the shared transmit and receive data for a ICOM, and then the tip, which is where the audio normally is. You don't use that at all. So let's take a couple more looks at this. So another picture of the FTDI board and another cable I made. That looks like the cable that goes over to my BTech radio. So what does that look like when it's all put together? It looks like this. Here's my Mac sitting on my desk with my BTech sitting on my desk with the cable, and I just downloaded that. So I actually went, and you'll notice I have that nice professional looking connector on the radio end. I went and found the cheapest connector, the cheapest cable I could find with that connector on. It was like $3, and I was like, well, at this price it's definitely going to have a counterfeit chip and it probably won't work. I plugged it in and the cable didn't work, but that's okay. I didn't care about the USB part. I just wanted the part that fit in the radio. Because my first attempt at the radio, at the cable, looked more like the white cable that you see versus the black cable, which is the one I actually am using now. And the white cable works just fine, except for those solder-it-yourself connectors that I bought are just a little too big on the plastic part to fit into the notch on the radio. So you actually have to do like a little bit of mechanical work on the, or you unscrew the plastic shields and you just plug the connectors in raw. And I felt that was just not to my taste, so I made the black cable instead. But you know, it's just that easy, you know, and with the connectors and a couple of crimp pins and a cable that'll fit your radio, it's really pretty fast. So I did obviously the same thing for the TYT radio. Now the TYT radio has a mini USB on the back of the radio, but it's not a USB connection. I mean, it's physically a USB connection, but it's actually the logic level serial. So the same thing, I just took a USB cable, cut the end off of it, and connected the 3 wires, the ground, the transmit data, and the receive data, and it's really pretty easy. And these things are really just so easy to build, because if you know which one is ground, then there's only 2 choices. One is transmit and the other is receive, and if it doesn't work, you swap them. So it's really pretty easy. So at this point, what I'm going to attempt to do is a little bit of a live demo. I'm going to check over here and see my radio hasn't turned itself off, so so that's a good thing. And we'll actually go through a couple of steps with it live. And I don't know, Mike, you can probably unmute yourself and you can kibitz as I'm doing stuff and suggest stuff for me to do. Otherwise I'll just do whatever I feel like it, and you know, maybe this way we can make it a little bit more interactive than me just showing some stuff. So give me a second here to launch CHIRP.
Okay,
right.
Sure. And yeah, while James is working on that, I just want to hit on a few questions and comments from the that we received. The cable that James showed in the picture with the two inputs. I think actually the term that was used in the question was the dual connector thingy. If you look at someplace, I think electronics parts places like Mauser Electronics is a big online one. Here in Connecticut, we've got a local parts store. That's where you can find supplies like that if you're going to make your own. Yeah.
All right, so let me click a couple of things and we'll kind of go back and forth.
Okay.
So I'll just click on radio, download from radio, and then Mike will talk as the download starts, but just give me a couple seconds to explain the clicks. And it comes back, and I'm going to find my serial port, which relates to it, and I've got the BTech radio, and this is a BTech 5X3, and you know, you could have seen that there was a long list of manufacturers that came up when I clicked on that. So we've got quite a few that just come up there, and I'm going to push download, or I'm going to push OK. We're going to get the warning saying, hey, this is a beta driver, so good luck. And one of the interesting things is, you know, you have to turn on the radio, and you actually have to turn the volume all the way up on this radio for some reason for it to work. But anyway, and it's going to go. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, great. And another question that we got was about cables, and you know, the what happens when the radio and the cable quit working together and talking to the software. You know, one of those things when something goes wrong like that, especially with programming software, anything between your radio and the computer, you know, the cable's kind of the first suspect, because the driver, you know, you're going to download a driver for it, and there may be an update to that driver that all of a sudden changes everything. Go to the users group. That's one of the great sources on information.
Let me give you an alternate.
Okay.
All right, so one of the great things about these little FTDI boards that I use is they have that TX data pin next to the RX data pin, and you can connect a jumper wire between the two of them, and then you can open up HyperTerm or CoolTerm or Minicom or whatever your favorite terminal program is, and if you type letters at it and they come back at you, then the driver's working and the chip is working and everything's working out to that end of the board. So you have this middle point where you can check things, and if you're typing along and you disconnect your jumper wire and the letters stop coming back, then that means that you really were going out to the chip and through the jumper wire and back in.
There you go. And I can tell you my own story from cabling or between a rig and a computer, not necessarily programming, but it was actually CW keying on a K3. If you use the wrong chipset, you end up with a really chopped off signal on your transmitted CW, and it all came down to just the right chipset. So if you're not making your own, just do a little snooping around, and you'll probably find somebody that had the exact same problem you did and had found a different cable that would work. Also, if you're going from a serial port to a USB with one of those adapters, that also can be another problem point.
Right, and that's, again, why I like using these FTDI breakout boards, is because they give us that middle layer and it gives us a nice point of isolation, not to mention the fact that I have one serial port that now shows up and I can change the radio end of the cable to any of those cables that I showed you, or other ones. I didn't show you the jet stream cable, which is sitting here somewhere. All right, so now you can see the download finished while we were talking, and this is a tri-band radio, so I've got some 2 meters, some 440 frequencies and things like that. So let's just kind of look at, let's just start with this first frequency and the properties for the frequency for this radio. So you can see, now it looks like a button, but you might not have known to look there. And so this is, whoops, it popped up on my other screen. Let me bring that so these are the different things that you can do: the power, skip, the tone, all that kind of stuff. And this has some other things. You know, not a whole lot of different things in this particular radio. But that's you know, so if we want to do the shift or the offset, or you know, change it from FM to narrow FM. We can do that here, or of course we could have done that change to narrow FM here. Anything that's on that main page you can do as well. There's another column that didn't quite make it, so the skip, you know, so not all of these things are properties of every radio, but this is kind of the basic stuff you see here. If I wanted to add a new frequency here, you know, we could just, you know, add a new frequency, you know, 44. Oops, I didn't want to go to channel 44. Let's double click. All right, in channel 44, we're going to put in, you know, 448.925, right? And we could put that in there, and we could, what is it doing?
One too many fours.
One too many fours, yeah. All right, let's delete that out. How do we get rid of that? All right. All right, so we'll edit this one and not put as many fours in this time. That's what it was telling me. So 44 9.925, whatever. Okay, so we've got that frequency. We want to use tone squelch on there. We want to use, you know, PL tone of 100. And well, we better split down at that point. That would be the right part. Or maybe, you know, maybe we want to use it in simplex, and you know, it knows the shift and that kind of stuff, and maybe low power. So you know, we can do that kind of stuff there. There are some general radio settings here. So here are the basic settings for this radio: what color we want it to be, all these other kind of stuff. The squelch levels, because this doesn't have squelch knobs. Display mode, whether you're doing name, channel, or frequency. It's got two displays on this particular radio, and then you got advanced settings, and then you got other settings, and then you got other settings. So this is different for every radio you get into. Oh, and this also does, you know, FM broadcast band, and you know, you could you know, preset some things in there. And I probably don't want to mess with the service settings. And then, you know, so we can come back here and go back to the memories. And then if you're really brave, you can go into browser, and this actually lets you kind of go through all of the data structures that are inside CHIRP. So I wouldn't, or maybe you guys don't see that. Maybe I only see that because I'm in developer mode. But that's basically how you do that. But let's say, you know, one of the interesting things with this is, you notice how all these channels are on low power? Well, I actually bought this radio before the last Hamvention to have something to demo with CHIRP with, and it turns out I actually had programmed those for high power, but in the earliest version of the driver, they had high and low backwards. So let's take all of these channels. So I'm going to click there, from there to there, and select all the channels, and go to properties. And again, it popped up on my other screen, so bear with me as I drag it back. And what we want to do is select power and set those all to high power. So we'll do a group edit and OK. Now all of those will run down the battery in my HT, and we can come up here in radio and upload all those changes to the radio. It already knows all of this stuff, so all you have to do is OK. It'll warn us again, and it'll warn us again. You can turn the warnings off, but I wanted to leave them on so people would see them. And we click yes, and with any luck, it'll go back up. So back to you for other questions and comments, Mike.
Okay, thanks, James. And I think you may have kind of answered one of these. Is there a way to do a group edit? I know we saw how to edit the power setting, but maybe can you do the same with other settings as well?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So if I wanted to, again, I could select. I'm not going to upload this to my radio because it would screw up what I want to do. But I can select all the channels again and go Properties, and let's change all of these things to a PL tone of 183, and there you have it.
Okay, great. All right. And how about lists that are unique to D-Star? Can CHIRP do any D-Star programming?
Yes, it can. So let me do this. Let me file, open, and I am going to. You're not going to see this. Well, I'll pull it over so you can see it. I'm going to open my ID880, which is a D-Star radio. And that'll show up on another tab here. Whoops, we got to wait a little bit for it to be ready. And so I'm not a real big D-Star. I never actually quite figured out how to make D-Star work. So, but here's some of the D-Star settings and things like that. And by the way, if we wanted to, some of the other things I didn't show is like if we wanted to import a bunch of frequencies, when we import the frequencies, we can say start importing these frequencies at like channel 100. So we can have our frequencies for in the Connecticut area at channel 0 through 100, and our channels when we're on vacation in Florida from 100 to 200. So you can group your frequencies any way you want. But the same way, I could also take a bunch of channels here and copy them from my 880, and I'll paste them in down here. So now so it's just that easy to copy frequencies from one radio to another. And all of the stuff that comes through right works fine, but who knows if we might have to go down and look at some of the properties on one of those channels and see if we're happy with what happened there.
Okay, great. And we got time for 2 more questions, which fortunately we got. If you need to undo something, can you do is there an undo feature or a Control-Z that you can kind of back out of a change that you just made?
Well, so, we've just made all of these changes to my BTech radio. I can always just come here and download again from the radio and get where we were. The other thing is I can save it, and then I can just open that file from where I saved it. So I would recommend saving, if you read some of those messages, it says after you download, save your image immediately and then start editing it.
Yeah.
That's what one of the messages said. So that way you can always get back. But in this case, I'll just download back from the radio, and we'll be back, and we won't have 183.5. We'll have, of course, it'll be this third tab now. This is what I just downloaded from the radio. Yeah. And so we'll start screwing around with this again.
Okay. Yeah, and that's something I've done. It's for each file that I've got, if I travel, I've got a file for that one, and then, you can go in and, if you plug in a tone of 146.2, you can click on that and make the change. But if you write it to the radio and you need to correct everything, bring back that saved file and then make the changes.
So one other thing I want to point out is these 2 boxes up here, the memory range from here to here. Mm-hmm. So I'm showing 128 memories here. On the ID880, I think has 1,000 memories, so it goes from 0 to 999. That's kind of impractical. So I might want to look at, channel, 100 to, 199. Oops, 100 to 1. If I can learn how to type 199, then we can select which memories we're looking at.
Okay.
And of course, if we don't show empty, then we see nothing. But so I like showing empty. That's the default. This radio, some radios have special channels like scan limits and things like that, and this button would turn those on and off.
Okay, great. And one final question that we got, and I think this might be a fairly straightforward one. Does CHIRP do automatic offset when you program a frequency in?
I haven't really paid too much attention to whether it always gets it right or not. I think it knows most of what it's supposed to do. But, again, you always have to double check all of the data associated with your radio and make sure it's all correct. Make sure you're programming in legal frequencies and those kinds of things.
Yeah, sure. And I do the same with mine. I just double check everything before you save it to the radio. And it looks like I see several folks have logged out already, so the debate must be coming on here shortly. But we're at the end of our hour, folks, and I think we've hit just about every question that came through. Dan, any closing comments?
Dan or James?
I'm sorry. I don't know where I got Dan from. I think I saw Dan Planet. James. James, any closing comments?
Oh, and I was in the MMRA hospitality suite at noon after my seminar last time, but obviously it's another leftover from the Boxborough Hamvention that I should have probably edited out. Sorry about that, folks.
That's okay.
But like I said, read the FAQ. Join the mailing list. You'll get a lot of emails, a lot of good stuff. I actually looked through my email archive to answer one of Mike's questions earlier, just before the webinar. I can see, we got a couple minutes of 9. I hope you all enjoyed this, and thanks for being a great audience.
Okay, thank you, James, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We have recorded this. We will post the League's YouTube channel, and join us for our next webinar, which will be October 25th, which will be an overview of Army and Air Force Mars. It looks like that may be a very full webinar, so if for some reason you can't get in, that too will be recorded and posted online later. Again, thank you, James, for presenting tonight, and to one and all, 73 from League headquarters here in Newington.